Leap Science and Maths School started in 2004 as a school serving a single community in the townships of Cape Town, the particular community Langa, which is the oldest township, functioning as a commuter settlement as an apartheid relic. There are about 100,000 people living in Langa, and 50% of those are children. Historically, those children have been underserved during colonial times and during apartheid, and now post-94, so-called liberation, education has struggled to shift from under-delivery and over-promise to anything beyond that. And so the Leap Science and Maths School was started to begin to address the low expectations and the poor infrastructure, poor teaching quality, and to create an opportunity for young people to reframe their expectations and to work hard in an environment which would support them in order to go to and through university. The needs in this country are great. We have a dropout rate of 65%. That is, 65% of all children starting school drop out before they get to the exit point in grade 12. Further to that, only 5% of children who pass in their final exit exams have access to tertiary study at universities. And a very small percentage of that would be poor people working and living in townships. Predominantly education is bought by the privileged and bought by white people who still live comfortably in the suburbs. For the small emerging middle class, black middle class in this country, they too can buy the right to private education or to high quality government education. There are only two tiers of education in this country. One is private, which is very expensive, and the other is public. Within the public school sector, there is complete dysfunction in the townships of the country and in the rural areas of the country that make up 85% of the country's education framework. The other 15% would be the former white schools, and there's still a measure of quality education offered within those schools. The Leap Science and Maths School is a registered public benefit organisation and a non-profit organisation working with the Board of Governors, and as a school we have to raise in the region of 90% of our funding. We receive a small subsidy from the government, but beyond that we are depending on corporate funding, most of it from South Africa, and more recently some international partners such as the Michael and Susan Dale Foundation. We reach out into the American continent through organizations like Ed Village to actually strengthen ourselves and to create new partnerships that will enable us to grow and develop not only financially but also from a point of view of our own leadership. We pay in the region of about $5,000 per child per year, and obviously the first task is to raise this money. We now have 4 schools, 2 in Cape Town and 2 in Johannesburg, and the prospect of further schools in the near future in Limpopo and Pretoria. We have developed very strong international partnerships, and we are investing deeply in the hope that these partnerships will enable us to share and to learn lessons from each other, and at the same time to develop the economic sustainability to actually make a significant difference in the systemic change of our country. We also work in our own country with the organization called Bridge, which we co-founded, and it is through this structure that we are looking to share the learnings of LEAP into the system of education in our country so that change becomes possible for more children than simply those that attend the Leap Science and Maths School.
My name is Zonke Mpotula and I am a LEAP graduate. I grew up in Langa, in a society where there weren't a lot of role modeling, and I grew up in a cycle that was as simple as to you end up in high school and there's no hope for university. And I grew up also in a family that didn't realize the support I needed for my own education because they weren't educated themselves. And so coming into LEAP for me was an exposure to a whole new different world. I came into a family that really understood what high expectations were. So I had to break the cycle in my mind that I told myself that I wasn't going to university and I wasn't going to be good in maths and science. The second part is that I was exposed to a self-discovering journey which I never thought I could be able to do, because then I was challenged to look at myself more, to challenge myself as not just a person from Langa who's waiting for someone else to change my own community, but to be the agent of change for my own community. So coming to the school really changed me a lot. Now I'm able to say I can lead, and I can lead in my community and with my fellow friends who are also were part of this journey that I'm. Having traveled in America and visiting some of the schools there, I got to get an idea of what are the similarities from our own communities and the schools over there. The fact that I had to see that each certain school was different because of the neighborhood it was in was very similar to here, because the public white schools, depending on the area that are in, are good schools, and same here with our own township schools. But there were a lot of differences though, that the teaching there is very much student focused and the teachers are driven, and also that depends on the school. If it's a good private school, then you would see that the students are driving their own education and the teachers are just there to facilitate. And as a person who's also studying to be a teacher, I was very inspired by that. And seeing the need in our own education system to get teachers to be driven, to get young voices in the education system, I saw how it would be very important to get the two nations connecting together and forming a partnership where they'll be helping one another. And the one other thing that I saw is that most of the students there needed the space or the opportunity to express themselves and to lead in any way that they could. And so together the young people from America and from South Africa could always come together and share their own opportunities and lead together.
And so, as Zonke said, we see this as a shared journey of discovery, as nations really struggle to find ways of addressing the inequity in their societies. So the Leap Science and Maths School is a flag-bearing organization in South Africa that hopes to really impact dramatically rather than incrementally on our education system by producing young, energized, self-regulated and fully conscious human beings who move on to become leaders in their own society. We feel we have a lot to learn from the American landscape, and we also feel we have a lot to share. Our journey's been a short one, and yet we have been learning constantly within that. We look forward to contact with any organization, any school, any individual who is working in the same way to look for solutions to deal with the inequity in our society. Our country epitomizes that inequity and has the greatest extremes on the continent. And we hope to be closing those gaps, not just the academic gaps, but ultimately the economic gaps. And we thank you for your interest and support, and for this opportunity to present a very brief account of what the Leap Science and Maths School represents in South Africa. Thank you too to Ed Village for creating this opportunity.